Welcome to the Education Corner, a podcast by Education Choices magazine.
Education Corner podcast are thrilled to welcome Head Mrs. Pippa Smithson from the Royal School in Haslemere. Could you tell us a little bit about the school, Pippa?
Hi, yes, of course. So the Royal School Haslemere is a co-ed school. We are an all-through school, so from reception right through to upper sixth. Currently we're on 2 sites, but we'll be based on 1 site from September 23. And we have got boarding and day students. Here we can sleep up to about 90 boarders, and we offer flexi, weekly and full-term boarding as well as day. And I think we all really like that combination, the fact that the day pupils benefit from the slightly longer days, the extra academic support, the various activities after school. The boarders have a very kind of rich and diverse community that they can hang out with as well. And we are placed at the top of a tiny little lane called Farnham Lane, and you drive up there and you think school can't possibly be at the end. But then you get to the top and there we are on this hill with the most stunning views. So it's a very beautiful part of the country. We're about 10-15 minutes from the Devil's Punch Bowl, if any of your listeners know that. It's a really special part of the country, wild ponies sort of gadding about in the common opposite us. But we're only 50 minutes from Haslemere, straight direct into London. So it doesn't take long to get into the action.
And you currently have a big project with the prep school, moving into the rather grand Stokely Hall on the same site as the senior school, and that should be by September 2023. Why have you decided to do this, and what do you feel the benefits are going to be of having the whole school on site?
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to all being on one site. Although we've always been one all-through school, it has meant that things have to be very carefully organised to get the older and the younger children together, for example, for leadership opportunities. I think quite often in a senior school, years 7, they're getting used to a new big school. Year 8 can be a bit more of a lost year. Where are the leadership opportunities? But you've got your prep school there. Suddenly you get year 8 involved with that sort of thing. And also that collaboration between the prep school and the senior school staff, ensuring a really smooth transition. You know, we know our children absolutely inside out, and that transition between prep and senior. Yeah. We've also got people who teach in both. An art specialist, for example, is very happy teaching across both of those sectors. So I think from that perspective, from the teaching and the expertise that some of our prep school children get from people who are actually teaching right up to A level, as well as the leadership opportunities that the children have, those are probably the 2 big pluses for us as a school. And Stokely Hall is a beautiful building, and I think, you know, having a really inspiring surrounding to help learning makes all the difference. And it means that that prep school is a standalone building. It's sort of separate from the rest of the school, so the children then feel they're graduating up to move on to the bigger school, but we're all on one site, so it's kind of together but slightly separate. It's got a nice feeling about it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the key points of entry to the Royal, and if there are any specific entry procedures that parents should know about?
Yes, so traditionally reception, year 3 and year 7 and year 9, and then obviously year 12 are your main points of entry. There's been a shift, though, I think, in recent times, particularly post-COVID. We've had quite a lot of people moving out of London and moving to the area. We've had some people who are still living in cities but actually want their children to weekly board or flexi board and are coming to us. So we're having people out of those year groups join us. Particularly popular has been the latter part of the prep school, so years 4, 5 and 6. And we don't have an entrance exam exam to go into year 7, because if you're already with us at the prep school, we know you inside out. We have lots of data on how they've performed in assessments. So we don't need to retest. I'm a big believer that actually that year 6 year should not be about doing test after test to practice for going into secondary school. That should be about enrichment and, stretching beyond the curriculum and really getting the best out of the pupils and developing their passions and interests. So that perhaps is partly where that popularity has come and join us in the latter part of the prep school. And then obviously year 7 is our main point of entry, but we also have some prep school feeders that go up to end of year 8. So we have children join us in year 9, and some of our international students feel a bit more comfortable joining in year 9 as full boarders rather than year 7.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the United Learning Group and what advantages you feel being affiliated to them have brought the Royal compared to perhaps being a standalone school?
Yes, I mean, it's a good question. So I was previously at another United Learning school. So I've been with the group now for about 7 or 8 years. And I think probably there are 3 main advantages. The first one, I guess, particularly relevant at the moment, given energy costs and costs of living and what we're kind of bombarded by in the media every day, is actually that we can offer competitive fees. We have got the backing of one of the biggest multi-academy trusts. There are, I think, 78 schools, academies in the group and 14 independent schools in the group. And so we've got that kind of stability and backing, which allows us to translate to our parents in the form of competitive fees. Probably one of the most exciting things about the group revolves around teaching and learning. Everyone shares ideas. That sharing of good practice is absolutely a key part of the group. So I, as a head, for example, on Thursday this week, I'll be going to London. I will meet with all the other heads in the group. We will have various people talking to us, various experts in the field, and they'll come in. There's well over 100 heads in there that they'll be able to talk to. But equally, it's about that sharing of good practice with one another. But that then filters down. So my heads of department all go. Every term, they will go and meet with other heads of department. They will share ideas. I think sometimes if someone's teaching, I don't know, Macbeth for the 5th year in a row, are they teaching it as well as they did in the 2nd year? Once they really got to know the text, and have they still got that same passion, and are they still bringing it alive in the same way? And actually going off and speaking with other heads of department, you watch people come back with a whole new gusto about what they're teaching, and that then translates into the classroom. It keeps it really fresh for the children and making what they're learning relevant. And I suppose the third part of United Learning is being able to have various CapEx projects ongoing and running. So we're currently looking at doing a master plan of the whole site with an eye to the future and potential investment.
And every school talks about preparing pupils for the future, but what does the Royal do that's different from other education providers?
So I think this is really at our absolute core. It's part of our DNA, ensuring that children are future ready. It comes from my absolute belief that education shouldn't exist in a vacuum. It is there to prepare children for the next stage. And so we do various things. Overall, we're determined to prepare them practically, emotionally, and intellectually for the next steps. And how we do that is a kind of several-pronged approach. First of all, we've written in-house our own bespoke curriculum that every pupil from reception right through to upper 6th will do. So to give you an example of what that might involve, so if we're thinking about making sure children are emotionally ready, our 6th form have just trained as mental health first aiders, those of them who wanted to do that. And they then wear a little badge and walk around the school, and other children can go and talk to them. They've had a training and they're qualified now as mental health first aiders. It might be, so if I think about intellectually ready, lower down the school, we get involved in something called a philosophon. That's not about debating and pre-planning it all. It's about sort of intellectual curiosity, thinking on your feet, developing an argument, collaborating with others. We've got at school a podcast and a studio and a TV studio. So a lot of our future ready lessons go on in there. And the great thing about that is it's all to do with growing children's confidence, their self-esteem. You'll have heard, I'm sure many people have said on these various podcasts, we're preparing children for jobs that do not even exist. So how do you do that? You do that by developing the skills in them that, with the growth of AI, we need to really develop the really uniquely human skills that we have. So that brings me on to the second part, which is around our reward system. And so our children get very proud to get future ready points. And that's around behaviours that they show. And those behaviours are the behaviours that we know employers want to see in their employees. So you know that you might have a AAA star student at A level, but do they show initiative? Are they able to collaborate well with others? Have they got a tendency to give up? And I think everyone listening to this who is an employer, that will probably ring true with, that you will think of someone who you've employed potentially fresh from university who may not be particularly tenacious or show initiative. So it's about so much more than just the grades. So these are the skills we really believe in, and we reward our children when they show those skills. So they might not have got the answer right to the equation that they're looking at, but they have tried it 3 different ways. They've showed real tenacity. And that skill of being tenacious is what's going to lead to success, as well as getting excellent grades, which will open doors for them. But those skills are so important. I think probably I have a slight bee in my bonnet that the curriculum hasn't really changed in 30 odd years. We're still teaching pretty much the same content as we always did, but the world that we're sending the children out into has changed so dramatically. So we need to keep that content. That's part of the national curriculum. That's part of GCSE and A-level. But we really need to think about how we teach that. And we need to get these children, learning how to think, not what to think. So that's really at the core of it.
Sounds amazing. As a school, you've had a 77% growth in boarding since September 2021, which really is going against the national trend. Can you explain why so many local and international boarders are choosing to come to the Royal?
We're really pleased with this part of the school. And I think a major part of it came from having a very clear strategy of what we want. We wanted a really diverse boarding house. So I didn't just want one particular nationality to dominate the boarding house. A truly inclusive and diverse boarding house is one that has got people from various parts of the globe. So predominantly we've got some European children, some are short stay, some stay and do longer stays. We've got at the moment French, German and Spanish children with us. We have some Hong Kong, some Chinese, we have some Korean children, we have local children who choose to board, we have children from London who come and weekly board with us. So I think that creates a real atmosphere in the house, that you have really people from all sorts of different cultures and everyone gets on very well. Mainly, I think, thanks to a fantastic boarding house team. We have probably more trips than any other school that I know of. They are every weekend, they go off on a trip, and quite imaginative things. So for Black History Week, they went off, saw a wonderful exhibition and met the curator of that exhibition. And so had really sort of bespoke and interesting trips away. We've got a couple of the children who are obsessed by basketball. They went, I suppose, so they went off and watched the local basketball team, so it's very much depending on the interests of the students, and they have a voice. They have a committee and they decide what would they like to do. So a lot of our growth came from the fact that our current boarders told their friends or their cousins or so on. So a lot of that growth happened through word of mouth. because people, are really enjoying boarding with us, which, as I say, ultimately comes down to some fantastic staff. It's a real home from home as well. So my head of boarding opens up her kitchen. The children are in there baking with her on a Saturday morning. There's a real openness to the place. And I suppose a lovely rapport between staff and pupils make all the difference as well.
I think that homely feel does make such a difference, doesn't it? Especially if someone's coming over from abroad.
So she gives them all a little present when they arrive as well. So they'll get a little plant and a little teddy, regardless of their age. Even when they're in sixth form, they seem to quite like that. And, a buddy to look after them. So I think it's all about that transition as well. And communicating then with parents in those early days, sending them a little photo of how they are and how they're getting on, because we all worry when they first go off to boarding school.
And I imagine also by not being too large, it means that there's quite a personal touch for the boarders and the attention and the time that they'll get with staff.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I popped in there yesterday evening after a relatively late meeting. I popped in about 8:30 and there were a few of them sitting with one member of staff going through some tricky chemistry questions and some others playing ball games with another member of staff who wasn't on duty but had just decided to pop in. So absolutely, there is exactly that. Everyone knows one another very well because it is relatively small and bespoke.
Can you talk to us about university destinations at the Royal?
So I think probably what we're most proud of is the diversity of the courses that children go on to do, because I think that shows you how well we know the children. So we've got children who will do very traditional degrees, so, law or English literature or maths. But we have children who do very specialist degrees like, statistics. And then also more vocational degrees. Gaming animation has recently become quite popular. Nursing, fashion, going off to the Conservatoire of Music. There isn't a sort of type when you leave the Royal, because, as I say, we know them so well that we make sure people aren't just going on to do something just because they think they're quite good at it, but actually, why do they want to go? And they're going to give 3 years of their life to this. Is it absolutely the right thing for them to do? And I remember hearing Mary Cumnock-Cook, who was the chief exec of UCAS, giving a talk, and she spoke about children, particularly children from independent schools, from a sort of middle-class background. Sleepwalking was her phrase, sleepwalking into university. And I think that's a major reason why so many children do actually drop out of university. None of our children do, and that is because they get such careful care and attention to make sure they're choosing the right course, dare I say it, not just the course that mum or dad wants them to do, but the course that they really genuinely want to do and want to pursue. And we work really hard with them to make sure they make those right choices. So well over half our children go on to Russell Group universities, which for mixed ability schools way above the national average as well. So we're pretty proud of not only where they go, but also of the diversity of courses that they study.
Fantastic. And then finally, as an inspector for British schools overseas, are there any lessons that you feel we can learn from international counterparts?
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting being an inspector because you get to do a real deep dive into another school, and there's always ideas that you can come away from. I worked for a little while in Australia for about 6 years, and one of the schools I worked in had something called the Dalton Plan, which was a very different system. There were less sort of directed hours, and instead they had something called study periods. And in a study period, you've had different year groups working on different topics and different assignments, and you as a teacher managed that. And actually the results were excellent. And just thinking about, and it's a really prestigious girls' school, it's called Ascombe in Australia, in Sydney. I think always just reassessing how we're doing things, what we're doing, not just the same old way, I think is so important. And certainly visiting schools abroad helps me do that. I mean, I went and was at a school in Cyprus not so long ago, and there they had a big project about building a car. Well, the Royal School has now got 2 green power cars. We've raced them at Goodwood, got into the final. Absolutely, that sort of inspiration comes from going and visiting other places.
seeing what other people are doing.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's so valuable, and chatting to other colleagues abroad as well as at home.
Thank you so much for sharing all of the information about the Royal. And you obviously have thoroughly enjoyed your first 3 years there, despite many challenges. And it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much, Pippa, for giving up your time.
Oh, no, pleasure. Lovely to chat, Chloe. Thanks.